Engaging the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness.
Good morning and thank you so much for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. We start by talking about Emmett Till. If you know the history, some of these images you will see this morning are disturbing. It was August of 1955. A 14-year-old boy from Chicago went to Mississippi to visit relatives. He never made it home. A week after Emmett Till arrived in Money, Mississippi, he was killed, in part because he whistled at a white woman. At least that had been the story until very recently when Carolyn Bryant recanted her version of events. She admitted it 10 years ago in 2007 when she did her first ever interview after the 1955 incident. But it's now just coming to light in a new book by Duke University researcher and author Timothy Tyson, In the Blood of Emmett Till. The author says Bryant, who is now 82 years old, told him any physical assault or sexual advances is simply not true. As for what else happened that day at her store, she no longer remembers. Whether he whistled at her, whether the 14-year-old flirted with the then 21-year-old woman, Bryant reportedly told the author, quote, "Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him." Her husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, John Millam, were acquitted of the murder charges by an all-white jury. But the men later admitted to a magazine they kidnapped Till, took him from his bed in the middle of the night, shot him, and beat him beyond recognition. His body found floating in a river days later. Emmett Till's mother, Mamie, stricken by grief, put her son's body on display for the world to see what happened. The images of Till's unrecognizable body at his open casket funeral were featured in Jet magazine and the Chicago Defender. She says she instructed her son before he left Chicago how he needed to act in the Jim Crow South, but admits it was hard to teach a young boy about deep-seated hate when he grew up knowing only love. To talk about the impact of this new revelation, we have Joseph Johnson, a filmmaker, anthropologist, and project coordinator for Columbia SE 63. Also, Dr. KENZOE Bryant Selassie, chair of Benedict College's Department of English, Foreign Language, and Mass Communication. Thank you both so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
Now, just for a little bit of context this morning, we know that Emmett Till's murder really helped to catapult the civil rights movement. Just 4 months later, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, and she says that she was thinking about Emmett Till when she refused to move. So when we think about and learn about this new revelation by Carolyn Bryant, what are we supposed to make of this? Is this supposed to change anything?
Well, I think a lot of us in the African-American community already knew what she came out and said. A lot of us had this feeling, or had this feeling of a trend that was happening in the late 50s, the 60s, and even the 40s. And I think it's something that we already knew.
And so what do we do with the information that we have?
So I think a lot of what we need to focus on with this type of information is start to understand the dynamics that are actually at play. Because when you look at the trajectory of the likes of Emmett Till, who was really a catalyst as sort of a sacrificial lamb that launched the civil rights movement, at least according to Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems, whose 1988 dissertation was actually on Emmett Till's murder, right? We look at that, we look at the life of Medgar Evers, and then we turn around and we come full circle to look at the likes of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Chandra Bland, and several others, and we start to realize that much of the white privilege that stems from racism and other aspects that are systemic still exist. So a lot of what we have to do is realize the system that is still at play and figure out ways to work with white people to get them to leverage the white privilege that they innately have to work to actually get rid of, if you will, aspects of racism and systemic injustices that continue to plague black people that are otherwise trying to live decent lives in America.
Yeah. Well, let's dig deeper into that and talk about some of the parallels that we see. Joseph, I don't know if you wanted to jump right in there.
Well, sure. And I was going to say, you know, piggybacking off of what you said, the idea and the goal is to continue putting forth the work. As you said earlier, Rosa Parks was compelled to keep her seat even though 3 women got it before her. The Greensboro Four, you know, they've seen these images that were polarized in the media and it enacted something in them to continue moving forward and continue doing civil rights work. And that's something that I think today we need to continue moving forward with this new information.
Are there similar conversations you think African American families are having with their children that might resemble the kind of conversation Mamie Till had with her son before he went to Mississippi?
I'm coming out of Washington, D.C. from Howard University, and the minute that people found out that I would be teaching in Columbia, South Carolina, I got pulled to the side and we had a conversation about what it will mean for me to have my personality and be African-centered and proud of my ethnicity and all of these aspects of blackness in the South. Today. And so when you consider that having a terminal degree does not discount the fact that a conversation like that is of critical importance, it speaks to the psyche of black people and understanding the type of peril and trauma that still exists around how we try to operate, live, and function in otherwise what is still a systemically pretty hideous and vile circumstance of racism.
And why do you think these conversations are still having to happen, especially now when you look at some of the more recent events that have happened in our history with parents talking to their children about how to interact with the police, for example?
Because it's simple to me. You know, we still see a trend of misfortunate events happening to black people in this country. You know, as I reflect, you know, my mother was a child during the 60s. You know, so for her to see something that's been reoccurring before she was even born, you know, that has alerted her to alert her sons, you know, to be alert in situations where you don't know where things could end up.
Right. And you remarked earlier that what Carolyn Bryant has recently come out with saying, or actually in 2007 when she came out with it, doesn't really surprise or shock many people who perhaps already thought that some of the events really weren't true. But when we look at that, when we look at the remarkable progress we've really made as a country in the last 50 years or so, what do we do with this new information? How do we move forward with it? Because it can make people angry, it can make people frustrated, but you still have to look and not forget about the progress we've made so far. So what's next?
Sure, well, what I think of what's next is better race relations and having open dialogue for starters. But I also think what's next is the African American community really coming together and having open conversations about the issues that are prevalent in the society today. Even though we've came a long way, there's still a long way to go, and I think that's a main topic of conversation in the community.
Right. Did you want to add to that?
I would, and I actually agree wholeheartedly. I think that one of the more poignant aspects of what we have to do, particularly as a black community, is be able to go through an entire process. You know, oftentimes I've looked at narratives that discuss how we immediately forgive, and it's often through the likes of pastor and clergy. But this aspect of immediate forgiveness really becomes sort of a face value response, because when you think about the types of psychological dynamics that require a person to actually heal from trauma, right? Because these are traumas when you talk about seeing the mutilation of a body, especially young people. You know, these become traumas to black community and black lives. And so this process of being able to heal can't start with just the immediate forgiveness. It starts with being outraged. It starts with being upset. It starts with then transitioning into dialogue and conversation without the concern of retribution from white people for daring to have the audacity to be upset or angered by such injustices. But then at that point, when you have finally resolved through all of the appropriate phases that are psychologically healthy and necessary, you get to that point of forgiveness where now it's a conversation about how we come together to figure out how to leverage the white privilege that people undeniably just automatically come into. Can't get people to apologize for white privilege. It's something that they just have as a result of skin color.
Well, wait, so let me interrupt you and ask you this. So A, do you think we've healed? And B, do you think this now opens up some old wounds?
Good question. So I don't think that we've healed because oftentimes we're so quick to forgive and try to transition into this aspect of at least American popular culture notions of, you know, good race relations that oftentimes people in black communities still don't necessarily know how to feel, because there's been no collective, if you will, effort to reorient us outside of these contexts of traumatic circumstance, where you're talking about cross burnings, you're talking about mutilation of bodies, and then you orient that trauma again into another generation where we see the likes of Trayvon Martin, we see the likes of Eric Garner, and several others.
Types of trauma,
it just
stemming from similar issues.
Absolutely, yes. It reintroduces you to that trauma all over again.
Right.
And while we have allies who happen to be white that do try to utilize their white privilege as a way of trying to rectify some of the injustices that occur, it still requires the black community to be able to process their story and their own voice with their own sense of agency to then figure out what they want to do, how they want to be positioned, to then come together and have an intercultural experience.
This has been such a great conversation, and I hate that we have to wrap it up now. We didn't have tons of time, but I would love to have you both back to continue our conversation.
Great.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Carolyn Bryant has written her memoirs. Her manuscript is in the library archives of the Southern Historical Collection at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It will not be available for public viewing until 2036. Still to come on Awareness, Millennials in America, the work ahead. How the talented 10th in Columbia is working to make this a productive year targeting millennials. Plus,
I loved the movie the first time because I thought it was really inspiring, me being African American and a female. So I thought it felt really good to watch it and see how three everyday women could just become so great and even have a movie made about them.
Hidden Figures, a box office hit that's educating and inspiring the next generation and showing them the sky is the limit. More Awareness after the break. Welcome back to Awareness. The talented 10th in Columbia was founded by Mayor Steve Benjamin with the hope of recruiting and retaining young talent. Joining me now, two board members, Kara Simmons and Antoine Seawright. Thank you both for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Now, how would you say this organization has worked to live up to its mission of recruiting and retaining young, educated talent here in Columbia?
Well, because I'm here along with myself, Antoine Seawright, we are proof of how the talent and skills can be ignited throughout the city of Columbia and be put to work to do service as well as build relationships among millennials in Columbia.
And so was there an issue of young people fleeing the city?
Well, I think South Carolina has had that issue in the past. You know, South Carolina has been ranked as one of the #1 states in the union in which young people leave to go find jobs and to live their lives. And so the mayor's vision for Columbia was to make Columbia the most educated and entrepreneurial city in the Southeast. And organizations like the Talented 10th, which was his brainchild, is a great way for young professionals to recognize the potential and the possibilities here in Columbia, South Carolina. I always tell people Columbia is so pregnant with possibilities, and it's up to us to make sure we keep, recruit, and retain the real talent to make sure those possibilities are birthed.
And what are you doing as an organization to really make that happen throughout the year?
So we have different events. We will host different networking events, socials. So we want to not only focus on work, but also the social aspects of Columbia.
It's all a part of it.
It's all a part of it. It's a full circle, being holistic, and oftentimes people just don't know. And then because it's a college town, many times students are just fresh to the city and they're not aware of all the opportunities and potential relationships that could be built in the city.
And when we talk about millennials, I know this is an obvious point, but we're talking about everybody. We're talking about different socioeconomic classes and everything, correct?
Yes. Yeah, because here's the deal. We're all in this together. And if Columbia is strong, it will be strong because all of us, whether you're black, white, rich or poor, young or old, it's because all of us have made Columbia the most entrepreneurial, educated place to be in the country. And I feel like this. I feel strong about this. For millennials, this is a great opportunity for us to be at the table, because chances are if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And this is our way of being at the table and making sure we make Columbia what it needs to be.
And have a voice. And part of having a voice is talking and networking together, and you're going to be doing that in the next week with the conference.
Yes, this year our conference is entitled Millennials in America, the Work Ahead. So like Antoine said, we are building the platform for young millennials across the Midlands area to come and sit at the table to have those conversations with CEOs, executives, and the community partners throughout the Midlands area. So we'll be kicking off Sunday, excuse me, we're having a Super Bowl party, and you can visit our website to find details. We have a string of events. We're partnering with the Nickelodeon Theater, and Wednesday we will be hosting an executive and CEO networking event at the NBSC building off of Gervais Street. So we would be happy for everyone to come out. And then the conference is actually on that Friday, and we'll be closing out with an African American history tour that Saturday.
At the State House,
yes,
correct? And so
at the State House.
Are a variety of workshops and different tours happening. The Freedom Riders film is going to be shown also, so a lot of great opportunities to network and really to get educated. Well, thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Leading the next generation starts with exposure. Exposure to the possibilities and staying connected to your community. The film Hidden Figures does that and pushes back against stereotypes. More than 600 students from Dent Middle School in Columbia, half the student body really, took a field trip to see the film Hidden Figures, and it wasn't just for entertainment. It was education to show students what is possible if you dream and do the work. And also maybe inspire some young people to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, or math. Now, that movie won a Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture.
These women did not complain about the problems, their circumstances, you know, the issues. We know what was going on in that era. They didn't complain. They focused on solutions. Therefore, these brave women help put men into space. This story is of unity. This story is about what happens when we put our differences aside and we come together as a human race. We win. Love wins every time.
The University of South Carolina wants to erect a statue in honor of the school's first African-American professor. In 1870, Richard T. Greener became the first African-American to graduate from Harvard University. 3 years later, he became the first African-American on USC's faculty, teaching classics, math, and constitutional history from 1873 until 1877.
In addition to being these firsts, which are important in and of themselves, was an enormously important person on campus. He served as librarian, put the library back in shape after the Civil War.
University officials are hoping to raise money for the statue and an endowment that would pay for future public lectures and programs that relate to Greener's pioneering spirit and his contributions. The statue will be unveiled next fall and will sit next to the Thomas Cooper Library. February is a time for special recognition of the impact and sacrifice of past and living trailblazers in the African American community. There are a lot of opportunities for a celebration and education this month. Kim Jamison is here with Historic Columbia, and Kim Hunter also joins us from Benedict College with some pretty exciting Black History Month events. Thank you, ladies, for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I want to start with, why is it important for all of the community to really embrace and get to know Black history as American history?
Well, I think that Black history is something that we need to celebrate and recognize all year long, and it's a part of the fabric of our community, and we interact with African Americans and people of diverse backgrounds on a daily basis. So being aware of the things that are taking place in your backyard is really important, and it makes you even that much more connected to your community.
Right, well, we'll come back to Historic Columbia in just a moment.
Okay.
Let's start with Benedict. Some great events going on, as you guys always have every year.
Absolutely, absolutely. And our biggest event is Harambe. And if you know, Black History Month started as 1 week, maybe even 1 day, but now it's the entire month of celebration, and we bring speakers in. I believe one of our favorite weather people on was going to be over there to talk to an English class. And so it's going to be a great opportunity for our young people to hear about the history as well as what currently is going on, and that helps to celebrate Black life.
Right, and you also have health screenings, activities for
Harambe, Harambe has grown to a 3-day affair. So we have a talent show where the different students and faculty and staff do a talent show on Friday, but then on Saturday, that's where we do prostate screening, AIDS screening, breast cancer screening, and all kinds of screenings with the community. And people come every year just to have those screenings. We have a kids village, and I'm glad you showed Hidden Figures, because our STEM students will be there doing experiments. They love to bring out the live snakes, and the kids love it because we teach them the science, the technology, the math and engineering that will get them hopefully engaged in what we're doing as a major, you know, because that's a great field.
That is great, and certainly Harambe events all encompassing. So
yes.
Thank you, Kim. And I'm going to have to switch over to the other Kim and talk about Historic Columbia.
Yes, yes. So throughout the entire month of February, there are a number of events and programming that the people from around the Columbia community, as well as visitors to the area, can take part in and be able to have a connection to not only Historic Columbia, but the offerings that they have. So right away, we want to make sure that people are aware of the Man Simon site that just recently did a complete renovation. We have upgraded a number of the interactive components that people can explore via the, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We know there are a lot of different events because you can be a volunteer with the Man Simon site. They have different workshops and discussions and different events for people to get out and
throughout
understand.
the month, there's going to be 3 different volunteer training opportunities that people can come and learn how to not only learn about the Man Simon site itself, but how they can then become a volunteer and be able to tell different people about the entire site. As well, we have some Second Sunday stroll and roll. So the strolls are when we do a walking tour around the Columbia community, hearing and having an opportunity to touch base on a couple of different African American sites specifically. But then this month in February, we're doing a Second Sunday roll, which is a bus tour, and that's definitely something we want people to come out and get involved in.
That sounds so exciting. And I know you both, Benedict and Historic Columbia, are filled with great events, and we will have these events posted to our website and our Facebook page. Thank you, ladies, so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
We'll be right back with a final thought and a 3-year-old boy who is not wasting any time learning his history. Stay with us. Black history is a part of American history, so knowing your history is very important. A Bishopville mother is making sure her children get an education and know their history, including her son, who just turned 3.
Education is very important because I didn't graduate from high school. And I always wanted my kids to, you know, do better than I did, but they started showing that like at an early age, that they love school, they like going, you know, and just all the different things that I never liked about school, they showed that they did. So I knew I had to kind of like stay on them and, you know, just motivate them wherever I could. And if they needed help and I couldn't do it, I would, you know, find somebody who could. Who was the first black president of the United States?
Obama.
And where does the president live?
At the White House.
Who refused her seat to the white people on the bus?
Rosa Parks.
And who dedicated her life to the Underground Railroad?
Area W.
And who was kidnapped and held captive?
Slaves.
Slaves. Good job.
Yes, good job, Savian. Keep striving and keep learning. He is well on his way, and we need to make sure we keep encouraging our youth and exposing them to their potential. I'd like to thank all of our guests this morning. Until next time, I'm Meaghan Norman. This is Awareness.